Hey guys, tonight we are going on a little journey, not to a grand battlefield or a glittering royal court, but into the quiet, desperate, and often slightly strange world of a Victorian bedroom at 3 a.m. We're going to explore the peculiar remedies and oddball theories our ancestors cooked up for a good night's rest. A fair warning, given that their solutions often involved questionable chemistry, questionable physics, and a deep suspicion of fresh air. You probably wouldn't survive this, but from the comfort of your 21st century bed, it's a wonderfully cozy and curious tale. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. It's a quiet, no-pressure way to support the channel, and it helps these stories find other tired minds in the night. And as always, I love seeing where you're all listening from. So feel free to leave a comment with your city or country, and what time it is for you. It's always a little magical to think of us all gathered in the dark, from different corners of the world, sharing a story. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The first thing you notice is the darkness. It's a different kind of darkness than you're used to. It's heavy, thick, and velvety, punctuated not by the steady orange glow of a street lamp, but by the moody, shifting light of a gas lamp far down the London street. The air in your bedroom is still and stuffy, carrying the faint, ever-present scent of coal smoke that has worked its way through the window sash. Your bed is a substantial fortress of mahogany and heavy linens, the mattress beneath you filled with horsehair that has, over time, settled into a landscape of lumps and valleys your body knows intimately. You've been lying here for hours, it seems, caught in that frustrating limbo between tired and asleep. You try all the usual tricks. You count sheep, but they get unruly, wander off, and start forming a union. You try to empty your mind, but your mind, it turns out, abhors a vacuum and immediately fills it with a detailed replay of a mildly awkward conversation you had with the baker 3 days ago. You flip your pillow, searching for that fabled, cool side, only to find it's just as lukewarm and unaccommodating as the side you abandoned. It's a very Victorian pillow, after all. Practical, dense, and not particularly interested in your comfort. Sleep is a guest that was invited hours ago, and has not only failed to arrive, but hasn't even sent a note. And then there's the noise. Your window, draped in heavy damask curtains, does its best. But it's no match for the symphony of 19th century London. This isn't the white noise hum of a modern city. It's a chaotic orchestra of distinct, sharp sounds. The most persistent is the rhythmic clatter of iron-shod hooves on cobblestones, a sound that echoes up the narrow streets with startling clarity. It's joined by the low, groaning rumble of heavy cartwheels, their wooden spokes and iron rims protesting every stone. A lone horse whinnies somewhere in the distance. The mournful chime of a church clock, perhaps St. Pancrastol's, the third hour. Each bell strike hanging in the damp air for a moment too long. This is the sound of progress, the sound of an empire that never sleeps, which is all well and good for the empire, but rather inconvenient for you. Historians still wonder if this constant din was a source of pride for the average Londoner, the relentless soundtrack of prosperity, or a secret, maddening torture for the city's inhabitants. The very fact that sleeplessness, often diagnosed as neurasthenia, or a weakness of the nerves, became such a common complaint, suggests it was very much the latter. You are living proof. Every distant shout, every scrape of a metal gate, every sudden clang from the nearby railway goods yard is a tiny, sharp poke to your already frayed awareness. The city is a restless giant, and it seems to be tossing and turning right along with you. A particularly dense wave of fog, a true pea souper, begins to roll in from the Thames. It muffles the sounds, but replaces them with a damp, clinging silence that feels even more isolating. You can almost taste it, the sulfuric bite of the coal smoke, mixing with the wet, earthy smell of the river. It's a blanket of smog that doesn't comfort, but rather smoke. You imagine it seeping through the cracks in the floorboards, curling under the door, a silent, gray intruder. It's on nights like this that you feel the full weight of the modern world pressing in. The speed, the noise, the sheer number of people crammed into this sprawling metropolis. It feels like too much for a human nervous system to bear. Your own system, at least, is lodging a formal complaint. You sigh, a long, slow exhalation into the chilly air. Something has to be done. This nightly battle is exhausting, and you're losing. The old ways, a simple prayer, a warm glass of milk, have proven ineffective against this very modern affliction. Your mind drifts to the heavy leather-bound book that sits on the writing desk in the parlor downstairs. It's a household manual. A thick tome of advice on everything from curing ham to removing ink stains and, you hope, curing insomnia. It's called something grand and reassuring, like the Complete Home Physician or Mrs. Beeton's Guide to Domestic Tranquility. Perhaps, you think, there is some forgotten wisdom in those pages, some peculiar, time-tested secret to finally coaxing that elusive guest, sleep, back through the door. With a sense of weary resolve, you push back the heavy layers of blankets and swing your feet onto the cold, wooden floor. The search for a solution is about to begin. The floorboards are shockingly cold beneath your bare feet. Each step, a small, personal betrayal by the house you thought you knew. You don't dare light a gas lamp. The hiss and pop as it ignites would feel like a cannon shot in the profound stillness. Instead, you find a small candle and a box of lucifers on the mantelpiece. The scrape of the matchstick is loud, abrasive, and the sudden flare of sulfur stings your nose before settling into the gentle, wavering glow of the candlelight. Your shadow, huge and distorted, dances on the floral wallpaper, a silent, clumsy giant following you out of the room and into the hallway. The house is asleep. The grandfather clock in the hall holds its breath, its pendulum momentarily stilled between ticks. Every creak of the stairs as you descend is a confession of your wakefulness. You enter the parlor. A room that feels grand and imposing during the day, but is now a cavern of dark hulking shapes. The moonlight, filtered through the fog, and the tall, mullioned window, is just strong enough to trace the edges of the furniture, the sturdy armchair, the round table with its fringed velvet cloth, and your destination, the dark, polished wood of the writing desk. There it is, the household companion and compendium of practical knowledge. It's a beast of a book, bound in dark green leather with the title embossed in what was once brilliant gold. Now, the letters are faded, their shine worn away by years of anxious hands seeking answers. You lift it with two hands. It has a satisfying heft, the weight of authority. Placing it on the desk, you run your fingers over the cover. It feels cool and slightly grainy. As you open it, the spine groans in protest, and the air fills with that uniquely comforting scent of old paper, leather, and forgotten time. Your small candle casts a pool of warm, flickering light on the pages, making the dense, black text swim before your tired eyes. You thumb through the brittle pages, your progress marked by a soft, rustling sound. You pass detailed instructions for dealing with a chimney fire, a lengthy treatise on the proper way to fold napkins for a dinner party, and a grimly illustrated chapter on identifying common household pests. It's a catalog of domestic anxieties, and tonight, you're here for a very specific one. Finally, you find it. The chapter is not simply titled Insomnia. That would be far too direct. Instead, it's headed on soporific measures for the restless mind and the vexations of wakefulness. You lean in closer, the candlelight illuminating the intricate engravings of serene, sleeping angels that frame the page, a cruel mockery of your current state. The first piece of advice is, to your modern sensibilities, completely backwards. The author warns gravely against retiring on an empty stomach. An unoccupied digestive system, the book explains, allows the body's energies to rush to the brain, fueling a torrent of frantic ideations and morbid fancies. Your frantic ideations and morbid fancies feel seen. The solution? A substantial, even heavy, supper. The manual suggests a bowl of thick, nourishing gruel, a slice of cold mutton, or even a baked potato, consumed just before bed. The goal, it seems, is to weaponize the food coma. You are to send your body's resources on a digestive mission so taxing that the brain has no choice but to stand down. Asterisk then comes the section on ventilation. And it's here that the advice takes a turn for the truly peculiar. You are warned, in no uncertain terms, to avoid fresh night air. The window, that portal to the cool, dark world outside, is not your friend. It is an entry point for miasma, a noxious vapor believed to rise from damp ground, rotting matter, and the river, carrying with it all manner of ailments from the common cold to cholera and, apparently, a restless spirit. A draft is not just a nuisance, it's a potential assassin. You glance at your own tightly sealed window, the heavy curtains drawn like a barricade. For the first time all night, you feel a small, smug sense of having done something right, even if it's for the wrong reasons. Back in your bedroom, the candle flame quivers as you close the door, plunging the room back into its familiar, moody gloom. The advice from the household manual echoes in your mind, mutton and miasmin. You feel no more rested than before. In fact, the sheer wrongness of it all has given your tired brain a fresh new topic to chew on. Defeated by the wisdom of the written word, you decide on a more proactive approach. The problem, you reason, is chemical. A simple imbalance that requires a proper, scientific solution. And there is only one place to find such a thing at this hour. The chemist's shop. Asterisk fortunately, you live above one. Your flat occupies the floors over a respectable establishment, run by a Mr. Abernathy. A man whose entire demeanor seems to be modeled on the dusty, unmoving glass jars that line his shelves. You pull on a heavy wool dressing gown, slip your feet into sturdy leather slippers, and prepare for a little excursion. The journey isn't far, just down the main stairs, and through a private door that connects your residence to the back of the shop, but it feels like a significant expedition. The air grows cooler as you descend, the scent of coal smoke and old paper giving way to something sharper, more medicinal. It's a complex, layered aroma, the sweet, almond-like scent of benzoin, the camphorous bite of eucalyptus, the earthy smell of dried herbs, and a faint, metallic temps you can't quite place. It's the signature perfume of Victorian healing. Asterisk, you unlock the door at the bottom of the stairs, and it swings open with a soft sigh. You are now in the chemist's back room, his inner sanctum. This is where the real alchemy happens. The room is a controlled chaos of mortar and pestles, brass scales tarnished with age, and stacks of small, neatly labeled paper packets. Bunsen burners stand cold on a stone countertop, their metal necks seeming to crane towards you in the gloom. The moonlight from a high, grimy window is just enough to illuminate the rows upon rows of drawers, each with a small, elegant porcelain label: cardamom, ginger, senna, belladonna. The last one gives you a brief pause. You know it is Deadly Nightshade, a name that feels a bit too dramatic for a Tuesday night. Asterisk. You make your way carefully through the clutter and push open the door to the shop proper. Here, the atmosphere changes. It's more orderly, more presentable. A long, polished mahogany counter runs the length of the room, acting as a barrier between the public and the potent mysteries behind it. And behind that counter is the wall of floor-to-ceiling monument to the chemist's trade. Hundreds of glass bottles, some small and delicate, others huge and imposing, stand in neat serried ranks. Each has a beautiful, gilded label, under glass, its Latin name written in an elegant, curling script. Some contain pale, clear liquids. Others hold dark, syrupy concoctions, or vibrant, jewel-toned powders. It's a library of potential cures. A silent army waiting for a problem to solve. Asterisk, you are not alone. Mr. Abernathy is there, a stooped silhouette against the faint glow of the street lamp outside. He's organizing something on a lower shelf, his movements slow and precise. He looks up as you enter, his spectacles perched on the end of his nose. He doesn't seem surprised to see you. Sleeplessness, after all, is good for business. The usual vexations? He asks, his voice a dry rustle, like old leaves. You nod, feeling a bit foolish. The city is particularly loud tonight. You offer, as if the noise is a new development, and not the very foundation of your existence. He gives a small, knowing smile. The modern condition, he says, as if it's a diagnosed illness. The nerves are overwrought. We must soothe them. Asterisk, this was a common belief, and a widely accepted historical fact. The Victorians medicalized modernity itself. The speed of the railway, the constant stimulation of the city, the intellectual demands of a changing world all were thought to place an unprecedented strain on the human nervous system, leading to a host of fashionable new ailments, like neurasthenia. Insomnia was merely a symptom of this larger, societal disease. The cure wasn't just about sleep. It was about calming the very spirit of the age. Asterisk, a lesser-known detail, however, is the sheer variety of what a local chemist could offer. While we think of pharmacies as places of strict regulation, the Victorian chemist was part pharmacist, part herbalist, part grocer, and part amateur inventor. Mr. Abernathy could sell you a powerful opiate, a bag of boiled sweets, a bottle of perfume, and a patented new type of soap, all in the same transaction. His shop was a one-stop shop for managing the frictions of daily life. Asterisk, he gestures for you to come closer to the counter, his long, pale fingers hovering over a selection of small, dark bottles. We have several options, he begins, his tone that of a sommelier, recommending a wine. It depends on the desired degree of tranquility. You gaze at the bottles, their contents dark and mysterious. They are filled with promises, the promise of silence, of stillness, of a mind finally at peace. Each one represents a different path out of the frustrating, buzzing state of wakefulness. The air is thick with the smell of possibility, a strange cocktail of ancient herbs and newfangled chemicals. The question is, which path will you choose? Mr. Abernathy picks up the first bottle, its contents the color of dark amber. The journey into the heart of the Victorian pharmacopoeia is about to begin. Asterisk, Mr. Abernathy holds the small, amber-colored bottle up to the weak light, swirling the contents gently. We can begin with the classics, he says, his voice low and conspiratorial. The gentle persuaders. He places the bottle on the counter. The label, in elegant script, reads, Aqua Lavandula, lavender water, a simple herbal tincture. A few drops on the pillowcase, a splash in a warm bath. The scent is known too. Quiet the mental chatter. You lean in, and he uncorks the stopper, wafting the scent towards you. It's a familiar, clean aroma, but this is no modern, sweet potpourri. It's deeper, more earthy and medicinal. The raw, honest smell of the lavender flower itself, mixed with the sharpness of alcohol. It smells of quiet country gardens and linen cupboards, a scent of wholesome, uncomplicated calm. Asterisk, you can almost feel it working already, the simple, pleasant fragrance cutting through the room's more complex chemical smells. It's a nostalgic sort of remedy, something your grandmother might have sworn by. The use of lavender as a soothing agent is, of course, an ancient practice, a piece of folk wisdom that had been passed down through generations long before it was bottled and sold by men like Mr. Abernathy. Its presence on his shelf, next to far more powerful and dangerous substances, speaks to its enduring appeal. It was the safe choice, the first port of call. Asterisk, pleasant, he continues, but perhaps not decisive enough for a metropolitan complaint. He sets the lavender water aside, a gentle dismissal, and his hand moves to a slightly larger, darker bottle. This one contains a viscous, treacle-like liquid. The label is more severe. Elixir, valerian A. Valerian root. A more forceful approach, he explains. From the root of the valeriana of. It does not merely suggest sleep. It strongly encourages it. He doesn't offer you a smell of this one, and you're vaguely grateful. You've heard of valerian. It's known for its robust aroma, often compared to old socks. It was, however, one of the most popular sedatives of the era, prescribed for everything from anxiety and hysteria to simple sleeplessness. It worked, but it was not a subtle remedy. It has a tendency to produce rather vivid dreams, Mr. Abernathy adds, a flicker of amusement in his eyes. Some find them diverting, others less so. Asterisk, you imagine yourself adrift in a bizarre, valerian-fueled dreamscape, pursued by the disgruntled sheep you failed to count earlier. Maybe not. You shake your head slightly, and he seems to understand. His fingers drift past a few other bottles, chamomile hops, passion flower, all members of the gentle herbal family. These are the acoustic musicians of the sedative world. You're looking for something with a bit more amplification, asterisk, and then he comes to it, the most famous, or perhaps infamous, bottle on the shelf. It's surprisingly small, the glass a deep cobalt blue, as if to warn of the power held within. The stopper is sealed with a thin layer of wax. The label is simple, stark, and written in a bold, confident script, laudanum. The word itself seems to hang in the air for a moment. This was the Victorian era's silver bullet, its universal panacea. A simple tincture of opium dissolved in alcohol. It was cheap, legal, and readily available. It was used to treat pain, coughs, diarrhea, anxiety, and, most effectively, sleeplessness. You could buy it from a chemist, a grocer, even a corner shop. It was a household staple, sitting in the medicine cabinet next to the sticking plasters. Famous poets wrote odes to it. Housewives used it to quiet fussy babies, and lonely souls used it to quiet themselves. Asterisk 10 drops in a glass of water, Mr. Abernathy says, his voice now a hushed, reverent whisper, and the city, with all its clamor, will simply fade away. He taps the blue bottle with a long fingernail. The sound is a dull, resonant clink. It guarantees a night of profound, dreamless slumber, utterly silent. The promise is intoxicating, a true off-switch for the world, and for the relentless noise in your own head. A lesser-known fact about laudanum is its taste. Despite its romantic and literary associations, it was notoriously, shockingly bitter. Seeing your hesitation, a new kind of energy seems to animate Mr. Abernathy. This is where he moves from mere chemist to a purveyor of the exotic, a merchant of the far-flung and mysterious. Perhaps, he says, his voice taking on the confidential tone of a man about to share a great secret. The answer lies not in our own damp and dreary climate, but in the accumulated wisdom of the empire. He gestures for you to follow him to a different, more dimly lit corner of the shop. This section is less organized, more of a curiosity cabinet. Here, dusty crates sit next to jars filled with unidentifiable dried leaves, gnarled roots, and what looks suspiciously like a desiccated seahorse. This is the imports section, a testament to the vast, sprawling reach of the British Empire, which brought not just tea and cotton to London, but a bewildering array of new substances. He reaches into a wooden tea chest stenciled with faded characters you don't recognize, and pulls out a small silken pouch tied with a red string. From China, he announces, holding it out. A calming tea, used by scholars and mandarins for centuries to achieve a state of placid contemplation. He opens the pouch, and a strange, faintly sweet, and earthy aroma drifts out. Inside are tightly rolled balls of dark leaves. They call it dragon's whiskers tea, he adds, clearly pleased with the name. One is to infuse it in hot water and drink it while reflecting on the transient nature of existence. You get the distinct impression he has just invented that last part. The truth is, this was a common practice. British merchants and apothecaries would receive shipments of herbs and remedies from across the globe: India, China, Africa, the Americas, often with only the vaguest understanding of their original purpose. A ceremonial herb used in a religious ritual might be rebranded as a sleep aid. A plant used by indigenous peoples to treat stomach ailments might be marketed in London as a cure for female hysteria. There was a colossal, and often comical, degree of cultural mistranslation. A widely accepted historical fact is that many of these imported botanicals were incredibly potent and effective in their original context, used with generations of accumulated knowledge, but by the time they reached a London chemist's shop, they were often divorced from that context. Their powerful effects a mystery to be rediscovered through clumsy trial and error. And from the subcontinent, he continues. Moving on, we have this. He picks up a small, squat jar containing a dark, sticky paste that looks like tar. A Brahmi concoction. The label says it is for sharpening the intellect for study, but I have found that a small dose taken with honey seems to have the opposite effect. It dulls the mind beautifully. An intellectual tranquilizer, if you will. He's essentially admitting to prescribing something for its unintended side effects. You imagine an Indian scholar carefully preparing this paste to help him memorize sacred texts, being horrified to learn that on the other side of the world, it was being used to help anxious Londoners achieve a state of blissful ignorance. One of the more quirky and lesser-known details of this trade was the doctrine of signatures, an old, pre-scientific idea that a plant's appearance hinted at its use. A heart-shaped leaf might be used for heart problems, or a gnarled, brain-like walnut for headaches. When new, unknown plants arrived from the empire, this old-fashioned logic was sometimes misapplied. A vibrant, red-flowered plant from Africa might be assumed to be good for the blood, or a sleepy, drooping flower from the Amazon might be immediately classified as a regardless of its actual chemical properties. It was a form of botanical guesswork, driven by visual puns. Mr. Abernathy, now fully in his element, points to a row of bottles containing powders of various earthy hues. Quinine from South America, excellent for fevers, but some of my clients swear it stills a racing mind. And this, he says, tapping a jar of fine, yellow powder, is a type of curry spice, I believe. Turmeric, a woman from Islington, insists a warm milk drink with a spoonful of this brings on the most peaceful slumber. You stare at the jar. You've had turmeric in a curry before. The idea of it as a sleep aid seems utterly bizarre. Yet here it is, presented as a plausible solution. He is essentially a culinary explorer, stumbling through the world's spice rack in search of a sedative. Historians still wonder, how many of these imported remedies were genuinely effective, and how many worked simply because of the placebo effect, amplified by their exotic origins and mysterious names. Was the dragon's whiskers tea calming because of its chemical makeup? Or because you were drinking something called dragon's whiskers tea, and the sheer theatricality of it was enough to distract you from your troubles? The power of suggestion, especially when backed by the perceived wisdom of an ancient, faraway culture, was immense. Mr. Abernathy wasn't just selling herbs. He was selling stories. And tonight, you are a very receptive audience. He seems to sense that he might be losing you in this global tour of questionable remedies. He holds up a hand. These are, of course, for the more adventurous spirit. They are less predictable. That is the understatement of the night. Predictability is precisely what you crave. You don't want an adventure in a teacup. You want a one-way non-stop ticket to unconsciousness. You look back towards the main counter, towards the familiar, reliable shape of the cobalt blue laudanum bottle, and the sterile, scientific promise of the chloral hydrate. The exotic allure of the Empire's mysteries is fading, replaced by a desire for something that simply and unequivocally works. Your brief trip around the world has only led you back to where you started, standing in a dimly lit shop in the heart of London, facing a choice between a handful of powerful and potentially dangerous chemicals. You thank Mr. Abernathy for his grand tour of global remedies, but leave his shop empty. The sheer number of options, from the folksy to the foreign to the frightening, has only amplified your anxiety. The choice itself has become another thing to keep you awake. You ascend the creaking stairs back to your flat, the chemist's cocktail of scents clinging to your dressing gown. It's clear that self-medication is a minefield. What you need, you decide with a sigh of resignation, is a professional opinion. You need to see a doctor. A few days later, you find yourself sitting in the rigid, unyielding waiting room chair of a Dr. Alistair Finch. His practice is on Harley Street, a name that even then was synonymous with expensive top-tier medical care. The room is designed to be imposing, dark wood paneling, heavy velvet curtains that block out most of the daylight, and a large, rather morbid oil painting of what appears to be a surgical demonstration. The only sound is the loud, judgmental ticking of a mantel clock, each second a small, metallic reminder of the money this appointment is costing you. The air is thick with the smell of beeswax, and a faint, antiseptic sharpness that makes you feel preemptively unwell. Finally, a severe-looking nurse calls your name, and you are ushered into the doctor's consulting room. Dr. Finch is exactly as you pictured him. He is a man in his late 50s with a formidable beard that seems to hold its shape by sheer force of will. He sits behind a desk so large it could host a state dinner, flanked by glass-fronted bookcases filled with intimidatingly thick medical texts. He doesn't smile. He gestures to a hard-backed chair positioned in front of the desk, placing you in the role of a petitioner before a king. He listens to your complaint, the sleepless nights, the racing thoughts, the cacophony of the city with an air of weary familiarity. He nods slowly, steepling his fingers under his magnificent beard. He doesn't ask many questions about your physical health. He seems more interested in your lifestyle. Do you read novels? Do you attend the theater? Do you engage in spirited, intellectual conversations? You admit that you do. A grave look crosses his face. Just as I suspected, he says, his voice a low rumble. He leans forward, his expression one of profound seriousness. You have a classic case of neurasthenia. You've heard the term before. It's the malady of the moment, a fashionable diagnosis for the sensitive, artistic, and well-to-do. The official historical fact is that neurasthenia, a term coined in 1869, was considered a genuine physiological disease, a depletion of the body's nervous energy reserves. It was the Victorian equivalent of burnout, but with a more dramatic name and a much higher price tag. It was seen as an unfortunate but almost inevitable side effect of being an intelligent, engaged member of modern society. In a strange way, being diagnosed with neurasthenia was a backhanded compliment. It meant your nerves were simply too refined for the crude, fast-paced world you inhabited. Dr. Finch explains it to you in metaphors. Your nervous system is like a finely tuned piano, and the relentless noise and stimulation of London have snapped several of its strings. Or, your brain is like a telegraph office that has received too many messages at once, causing its delicate machinery to overheat. The pressures of modern civilization, are draining your vital force. He writes the word neurasthenia on a notepad with a flourish, as if the diagnosis itself is part of the cure. Now, for the treatment. He dismisses the remedies you saw at the chemist's shop with a wave of his hand. Mere symptom management, he scoffs. Potions and powders. They are the tools of the provincial apothecary, not of modern medicine. The doctor's words echo in your head as you leave his dimly lit consulting room. Go to the seaside, breathe clean air, listen to the birds. It sounds simple, almost poetic. a prescription for pastoral peace. The idea takes root in your tired mind, blooming into a romantic image of rolling green hills, quaint thatched roof cottages, and a profound, blissful silence, broken only by the gentle lowing of a distant cow. This, you think, is the answer. Not a chemical intervention, but a geographical one. A strategic retreat from the battlefield of London, and so, you begin your preparations. You pack a trunk, but following Dr. Finch's orders, you leave the sensational novels and political pamphlets behind. Instead, you pack sensible walking boots, a thick woolen jumper, and a book of profoundly uninteresting botanical illustrations. You inform your landlord, settle your affairs, and purchase a second-class train ticket to a small, unheard-of village in the heart of Sussex that a travel agent assured you was aggressively tranquil. The very act of planning this escape is invigorating. You feel like a convalescent patient, a weary soldier being granted a furlough from the front lines of urban life. The day of your departure arrives. You stand on the platform at Victoria Station, a vast echoing cathedral of iron and glass. The air is thick with steam and coal smoke, a final, choking farewell from the city you're leaving behind. The shriek of a train whistle cuts through the noise, a sound that usually sets your teeth on edge. But today, it sounds like a cry of liberation. You find your carriage and settle into a seat by the window. The train lurches, groans, and then slowly, powerfully, begins to pull away. You watch as the familiar landscape of soot-stained brick and crowded streets slides by, gradually giving way to sprawling suburbs, and then, finally, 2 patches of green. You press your forehead against the cool glass of the window, a sense of profound relief washing over you. You are escaping. The journey itself is part of the cure. The rhythmic clatter of the wheels on the track becomes a soothing, meditative mantra. Getting away, getting away, getting away. You watch the scenery transform. The dense tapestry of the city unravels into a patchwork of fields, woods, and streams. You see sheep grazing on a hillside, their placid indifference a stark contrast to the frantic energy of London. You see a lone figure guiding a plow horse across a field, a scene so timeless and peaceful it could be from 100 years ago. This is the world Dr. Finch promised, a world without urgency. The widely accepted historical fact is that this fresh air cure was a cornerstone of Victorian and Edwardian medicine for a whole host of ailments, most famously tuberculosis, but also for nervous disorders. Sanatoriums were built in mountainous regions and coastal towns, predicated on the belief that clean, ozoniferous air had direct therapeutic properties. It was thought to purify the blood, calm the nerves, and restore the body's natural balance. This wasn't just about a change of scenery. It was a prescribed medical treatment. The air itself was the medicine. As the train chugs deeper into the countryside, you notice the quality of the light changing. It's softer, yellower, no longer filtered through a permanent haze of industrial smoke. You slide the window down a few inches, defying the old fears of miasma, and breathe in. The air is crisp and cool, carrying the scent of damp earth, wet leaves, and something vaguely sweet, like hay. It feels clean, wholesome. You can almost feel it scouring the soot from your lungs. Dr. Finch, for all his sternness and exorbitant fees, might have been onto something. A lesser known, and rather charming, detail of this era was the rise of the railway poster. To encourage this very kind of therapeutic travel, railway companies commissioned beautiful, colorful posters depicting idealized versions of the countryside and seaside. They showed happy, healthy families strolling on sunny beaches and rosy-cheeked hikers admiring dramatic landscapes. These posters weren't just advertisements. They were selling a dream of health and tranquility, painting the railway as the conduit to a better, more natural way of life. Your own mental image of the peaceful village you're headed to was likely shaped, consciously or not, by one of these very artworks. Asterisk, you pass through small, sleepy stations with names like Upper Bramble and Cricklewood End. People get on and off, their faces seeming less pinched, their movements less hurried than the London crowds. They carry baskets of produce or bundles of wood. They speak in softer tones, their local accents, a kind of gentle, musical burr. You feel your own posture begin to relax, the tight knot of tension in your shoulders starting to loosen. The relentless, high-frequency hum of the city is finally fading from your nervous system, being replaced by the slower, deeper rhythms of the countryside. Asterisk historians still wonder about the psychological impact of this deliberate separation from the modern. Was it a true rejection of progress, or a necessary valve to release its pressures? For many, the city represented work, ambition, and anxiety, while the country represented a kind of nostalgic, pre-industrial innocence. This dichotomy, a bit of a romantic fiction, was incredibly powerful. The journey you are on is not just a trip from one place to another. It's a journey back in time, or at least to a place that feels like it's outside of time. Asterisk, as the sun begins to set, casting long, golden shadows across the fields. The train finally slows, groaning to a halt at a tiny, deserted station. A single signpost reads, "Little Hushing." It seems promising. You step out onto the platform, your trunk thudding down beside you. The train pulls away, its whistle a lonely sound in the vast quiet. And then, it's gone. You are alone. The silence that descends is absolute, a thick, heavy blanket of quiet, unlike anything you have ever experienced. It is the sound of nothing, and in that moment, you are sure, absolutely certain, that you will sleep tonight. You have arrived. You are cured. Asterisk. You take a deep, cleansing breath of what you assume is pure, unadulterated country air. The silence is profound, a vacuum where the city's constant roar used to be. The station master, a man who looks as old and weathered as the wooden bench he's sitting on, points you down a narrow, muddy lane. The guest house is a mile's walk, he says. You can't miss it. It's the only one. With a sense of buoyant optimism, you hoist your bag and set off. Your sensible boots making satisfying squelching sounds in the mud. The lane is flanked by high, overgrown hedgerows, and the last of the evening light filters through the leaves, dappling the path in shifting patterns of gold and gray. This is it. The gentle, pastoral world you were promised. Asterisk, you arrive at the guest house as twilight deepens into true night. It's a rambling, ivy-covered building with a slightly crooked roof and windows that glow with a warm, welcoming light. Your landlady, a Mrs. Higgins, is a stout, rosy-cheeked woman who seems permanently cheerful. She shows you to your room, which is small, clean, and smells faintly of beeswax and dried flowers. The bed is covered with a thick, handmade quilt, and through the open window, you can see a sky glittering with an astonishing, almost shocking, number of stars, a sight you've nearly forgotten exists. You eat a simple supper of bread, cheese, and a slightly watery vegetable soup, and the sheer blandness of it feels wonderfully restorative, just as Dr. Finch ordered. Asterisk, finally, the moment you've been waiting for all week. You extinguish your lamp, climb into the cozy bed, and pull the heavy quilt up to your chin. You lie there, smiling in the darkness, and listen. You listen for the silence, and that's when you hear it. The first sound is a low, mournful moo from a field nearby. It's not the gentle, distant lowing you imagined. It's a loud, gut-deep complaint, and it seems to be happening right outside your window. A few seconds later, it's answered by another cow, further away, setting off a chain reaction of bovine conversation across the valley. Asterisk, then, another sound joins the chorus, a rhythmic, high-pitched, chirping crickets. Not one or two, but thousands of them, a relentless, pulsating wave of sound that fills every inch of the night. It's a noise that is impossible to ignore, a high-frequency fizz that seems to drill directly into your ears. Beneath that, you become aware of a frantic, rustling sound in the ivy outside your window. A bird, a rat, a ghost. Your city-trained mind, accustomed to human or mechanical noises, cycles through the possibilities, each more alarming than the last. An owl lets out a sudden, piercing hoot-to-it, to what makes you jump. Asterisk, the countryside, you are beginning to realize, is not silent at all. It is astonishingly, overwhelmingly loud. It's just a different kind of loud. The widely accepted historical fact is that our perception of sound is entirely relative. For a Victorian Londoner like you, whose ears were attuned to the specific frequencies of hooves on cobblestone, train whistles, and human shouts, the alien soundscape of the natural world could be just as jarring and disruptive as the city was to a country visitor. There's no natural setting for the human ear. There is only the familiar and the unfamiliar. Asterisk, a lesser known, and rather funny detail from this period comes from the letters and diaries of people who undertook these rescues. Many complained bitterly about the noise, they wrote, of being kept awake by the incessant screaming of owls, the demented cackling of unseen creatures, and the deafening roar of the wind in the trees. One gentleman, on a prescribed seaside, "Your countryside retreat ends not with a bang, but with a weary, sleep-deprived surrender. After 2 weeks of being serenaded by owls, and woken by the pre-dawn crowing of a rooster with a theatrical sense of timing, you concede defeat. The symphony of nature is not for you. You pack your trunk, leave a polite but firm note for the relentlessly cheerful Mrs. Higgins, and catch the first train back to London. As you pull into Victoria Station, the familiar blanket of smog and the chaotic din of the city feel, to your surprise, almost comforting. It's the devil, you know. Your nerves may be frayed, but at least they're frayed by familiar irritants. But the problem remains. You are still not sleeping. Dr. Finch's geographical cure was a bust, and Mr. Abernathy's chemical solutions feel too much like a gamble. There must be another way, a modern, scientific, mechanical way. You are, after all, living in the great age of invention, an era that produced the steam engine, the telegraph, and the electric light bulb must surely have produced a machine for inducing slumber. And so, your quest enters a new phase. You turn to the Sears catalog of its day, the mail order, compendium.u, sit in your parlor with a cup of tea, and the latest edition of the Army and Navy Cooperative Society catalog. It's a wonderfully thick book, filled with thousands of intricate engravings of every conceivable object a respectable household might need, from teacups to tennis rackets to full safari outfits. You flip past the furniture and the firearms, heading for the section marked Medical and Scientific Apparatus. Here, nestled between advertisements for artificial limbs and ear trumpets, you find it, a whole subsection dedicated to aids for the nervous and the sleepless. The first item that catches your eye is the patent ventilating corset. The illustration shows a woman sleeping peacefully, her torso encased in a formidable-looking corset riddled with small holes. The text explains that poor sleep is often caused by an overheating of the vital organs during the night. This revolutionary garment, constructed with breathable canvas and strategically placed ventilation grommets, promises to maintain a cool and regular temperature around the torso, preventing the buildup of noxious bodily humors that agitate the mind. It looks incredibly uncomfortable, like trying to sleep in a cage. But the serene expression on the illustrated woman's face is undeniably persuasive. You turn the page. The next invention is even more curious. Dr. Scott's electric corset is also on offer, but you linger on the magnetic pillow of life. This isn't just a pillow, it's a scientific instrument. According to the description, the pillow is filled not with feathers, but with a special mixture of magnetized iron filings and horsehair. The Earth, it explains with grand scientific authority, is a giant magnet. and our bodies are designed to be in harmony with its magnetic fields. The iron and steel of a modern city, from the bed springs to the building frames, disrupt this natural harmony, leading to nervous tension and sleeplessness. The magnetic pillow, by creating a powerful magnetic field right under your head, realigns your personal magnetism with the planets, producing a deep, restorative, magnetic sleep. It's utter pseudoscience, of course, but it's presented with such earnest conviction that you almost believe it. This is a widely accepted historical fact. The late 19th century saw a massive boom in patent medicines and pseudoscientific health gadgets, with the rise of mass production, advertising, and a postal service that could deliver anywhere. Inventors and entrepreneurs could market their weird and wonderful contraptions to a huge, hopeful, and often scientifically illiterate audience. The line between genuine innovation and outright quackery was incredibly blurry, and catalogs were the primary battlefield for these ideas. Lesser-known detail is the sheer creativity of the afflictions these devices claimed to cure. One electric belt in a similar catalog promised to cure not just insomnia, but also lumbago, indigestion, hair loss, and a general lack of vigor. The marketing copy was a masterclass in vague but compelling promises. These inventors weren't just selling a product. They were selling hope in a box, a mail-order miracle for the anxieties of the age. You continue to browse, your fascination overriding your skepticism. There's the hydropneumatic sleep inducer, a terrifying-looking device that seems to involve a rubber bladder you fill with either hot or cold water and place on your forehead, held in place by a series of leather straps. It promises to regulate the temperature of the brain itself. Next to it is the Somnus vibrating recliner, a heavily upholstered armchair with a hidden clockwork mechanism in its base. You wind it up before bed, and it gently vibrates for a full hour, a motion that is guaranteed to soothe the most agitated nerves. You picture yourself being slowly buzzed to sleep, rattling gently in your parlor like a forgotten teacup on a moving train. Historians still wonder, how many of these gadgets were sold, and how many people actually used them? Were they bought in a moment of late-night desperation, and then hidden away in a cupboard? Or did people genuinely strap themselves into ventilating corsets and sleep on pillows full of metal shavings? The catalogs provide the evidence that they were marketed, but the user experience is largely lost to history. One can only imagine the conversations. "Darling, are you wearing the electric belt tonight? Or shall I wind up the vibrating chair for you?" Your finger traces the engraving of the magnetic pillow. It looks so plush, so scientific. The promise is so grand, realigning your personal magnetism. It sounds so much more sophisticated than counting sheep. The lure of a simple one-time purchase that will solve your problem permanently is incredibly strong. You don't need to change your location or risk your health with strange chemicals. You just need to buy the right thing. It's a very modern solution, in a wave of belief that technology can fix even the most deeply human of problems. With a sigh, you begin to fill out the order form. A magnetic pillow of life, please. And perhaps, just in case, a small bottle of lavender water for the journey there. The magnetic pillow of life arrives a week later in a sturdy cardboard box. It's heavier than you expected, and when you shake it, you can hear a faint, sandy rustling from within the sound of your magnetized iron filings. That night, you place it on your bed with a sense of ceremony. It feels lumpy and unyielding, but you are not seeking comfort. You are seeking alignment. You lay your head down, close your eyes, and wait for the planet's magnetic field to work its magic. You wait, and wait, and wait. You try to feel your personal magnetism being realigned. You mostly just feel a dull ache in your neck. The pillow, it turns out, is a dud. Your vital forces remain stubbornly undrained, and your sleeplessness remains stubbornly intact. Your faith in mail-order mechanics is shaken, but not shattered. The catalog held other promises. Your eye had been drawn to another category of device, one that seemed even more futuristic and potent. The electrical cure. Electricity was the great mystery and marvel of the age. It was transforming cities with light and communication, so why couldn't it transform the human body? You decide to investigate this electrifying possibility further. This brings you back to a shop, but not Mr. Abernathy's. This one is on a grander, more commercial street. The sign above the door reads the Pulvermacher Galvanic Company, and the window display is a bewildering forest of wires, metal plates, and disembodied anatomical diagrams. Inside, a slick, well-dressed salesman greets you. He speaks not of humors and miasmas, but of circuits, currents, and bioelectricity. The source of all life, he says, gesturing expansively around the shop, is electrical. Your nervous system is nothing more than a biological telegraph. Your sleeplessness is simply a case of a weak or irregular signal. He leads you to a glass case, displaying the company's flagship product, the improved galvanic chain belt. It is a belt made of linked zinc and copper discs, backed with soft flannel. It looks like something a steampunk superhero might wear. The salesman explains the science with breathless enthusiasm. When worn directly against the skin, the moisture from your own body, your sweat activates the two different metals, creating a tiny, continuous electrical current. This is a legitimate scientific principle, the basis of a simple battery. Where it veers into fantasy is what this current supposedly does next. This gentle, life-giving current, the salesman explains, is absorbed directly into the nervous system. It recharges the body's depleted electrical energies, restores vigor, and produces a state of profound, electrifying calm. He says electrifying calm without a trace of irony. This is the widely accepted historical fact of the matter. The late 19th century was rife with medical galvanism. People genuinely believed that applying low-voltage electrical currents to the body could cure an astonishing range of ailments. From baldness to paralysis to, of course, insomnia. It was seen as the most modern of all medical treatments. A way of directly interfacing with the body's fundamental energies. The salesman, sensing a sale, shows you testimonials. Letters from satisfied customers. A clergyman from Bristol writes that, after one night of wearing the belt, his mental agitation ceased entirely and he slept like a babe in arms. A lady of nervous disposition from Bath claims the belt not only cured her insomnia, but also improved her singing voice. The galvanic chain belt is a profound disappointment. The gentle, pleasant tingle the salesman promised is, in reality, a faint, metallic smell, and the occasional, clammy feeling of the flannel backing against your skin. You wear it for 3 nights, feeling less like a recharged battery and more like a piece of science fair equipment. Your sleep is not improved. In fact, the faint anxiety that you might somehow short-circuit in the night adds a new, technological layer to your wakefulness. You coil the belt up and hide it in the back of your wardrobe, next to the lumpy magnetic pillow. Your foray into mechanical and electrical cures is officially over. Asterisk, you are exhausted. Exhausted from not sleeping, and exhausted from the very effort of trying to sleep. The cures have become more taxing than the condition. You have traveled, you have consulted, you have purchased, you have electrified, and yet, here you are, back in your stuffy London bedroom, with the church clock chiming 3 a.m., and your mind buzzing more relentlessly than the galvanic belt ever did. You feel a sense of despair. If science and geography and chemistry can't help, what's left? Asterisk. Then you remember a piece of advice from the very beginning of your quest, tucked away in the pages of that dusty household manual, the fine art of boring oneself to sleep. At the time it seemed too simple, too foolish. Now, in your desperation, it feels like the only path you haven't properly explored. The household manual had suggested reading parliamentary reports. The idea is so utterly, profoundly dull that it just might work. It's the intellectual equivalent of eating a heavy meal before bed, a task so arduous and unrewarding that your brain might simply shut down in protest. Asterisk the next day. You venture to a dusty old bookshop that specializes in government publications and out-of-print texts. The proprietor is a small, wizened man who seems to be made of paper, dust, and tweed. When you ask for parliamentary debates, a flicker of something's surprise. Pity crosses his face. He leads you to a dark, neglected corner of the shop. Here, stacked from floor to ceiling, are thick, somber-looking volumes bound in dark, uniform colors. They are the collected records of Hansard, the official report of every word spoken in the Houses of Parliament. Asterisk, which year? The bookseller asks. You shrugged. A boring one. He permits himself a small, dry cough that might be a laugh. They are all boring, sir. It is their primary function. He pulls out a volume at random. Parliamentary Debates, House of Commons, 1884, volume 287. It is a monster of a book, thick and heavy, its pages filled with dense, two-columned text. You open it to a random page. The heading reads, "A Debate on the Municipal Sewage Works Amendment Act." Your eyes glaze over instantly. It's perfect. Asterisk. This is a widely accepted historical fact. Boredom was a legitimate, if informal, medical strategy. The Victorian concept of overstimulation as a cause of illness naturally led to its opposite, profound, crushing dullness as a potential cure. While doctors might not have formally prescribed reading agricultural statistics, the principle of avoiding all mental excitement was central to the rest cures they championed. The goal was to give the overwrought mind nothing to latch onto, to starve it of interesting input until it simply gave up and went quiet. Asterisk that night. You prepare for bed with a new sense of purpose. You prop yourself up against your pillows, the original, non-magnetic ones, position a candle carefully on your bedside table, and open the heavy tome. You begin to read, your voice a low monotone in the quiet room. Mr. Gladstone rises to address the honorable members on the subject of subclause for B, concerning the appropriate tariffs for the transportation of lime for agricultural purposes. The language is stilted, formal, and utterly devoid of passion or narrative. The sentences are long and convoluted, winding through subordinate clauses and legalistic jargon, only to arrive at a point of breathtaking obscurity. Asterisk a lesser-known detail about these parliamentary records is just how granular they could be. They didn't just record the big, dramatic debates about war and reform. They recorded everything. Hours of discussion could be dedicated to the dredging of a provincial river, the exact specifications for the new uniforms of lighthouse keepers, or a lengthy, bitter argument over the placement of a public water pump in a small village. It is a minute, unedited transcript of the business of running an empire, and much of that business was crushingly, stupefyingly boring. Asterisk, you read on. You learn more than you ever wished to know about the import duties on jute from India. You follow a heated, yet incomprehensible, debate about the proper gauge of railway tracks in the colonies. Your mind starts to drift. The names of the members of Parliament, Mr. Asquith, Mr. Balfour, Mr. Chamberlain, begin to blur into a single, droning sound. The arguments about sewage and tariffs and jute lose all meaning, the words dissolving into pure, unadulterated noise. This is not like reading a story, where your brain engages with plot and character. This is like watching paint dry, but with more syllables. Asterisk historians who have to read these documents for their research often report a similar trance-like state. It's a unique form of mental fatigue. The sheer volume of information, combined with its total lack of narrative or emotional resonance, is neurologically taxing. You can almost feel the synapses in your brain slowing down, the frantic energy of your thoughts being smothered under a thick, heavy blanket of pure, uncut legislative tedium. Asterisk, your eyelids feel heavy. The book feels heavier. Your monotone reading falters, your voice thick with an authentic, Non-performative drowsiness. You are not pretending to be tired. The debate on the Municipal Sewage Works Amendment Act is genuinely defeating you. You manage one more sentence about drainage rights before the candle flame starts to swim and multiply. The book slumps onto your lap. You have managed to read 4 pages. It has felt like a lifetime. You lean over, blow out the candle, and slide down into the welcoming darkness. For the first time in a long time, your mind is not racing. It is numb. It is blissfully, wonderfully, parliamentarily bored. The parliamentary debates work. For 3 consecutive nights, you manage to bore your brain into a state of quiet submission. The method is effective, but it feels bleak. The last thing you experience before drifting off is the ghost of a debate on turnpike road maintenance. And the first thing you feel upon waking is a faint, lingering dread of jute tariffs. The cure is beginning to feel as joyless as the affliction. There has to be a gentler way, a more pleasant path to the same destination. You want to be lulled to sleep, not bludgeoned into it with legislative prose. Your mind drifts back to the encyclopedic, Mr. Abernathy and his library of bottles. You recall him gesturing dismissively past a few simple herbal remedies on his way to the more potent elixirs. One of them had stuck in your mind, hops. You knew them as the bittering agent in beer, but he had mentioned them in the context of sleep. This feels different from the other cures. It's not a dramatic chemical, a bizarre machine, or an exercise in extreme boredom. It's a folk remedy, something simple and earthy, a piece of countryside wisdom that doesn't involve being deafened by a cow. Your research conducted not in a chemist's shop this time, but at a public library confirms the connection. You find references in old herbals and domestic guides to the soporific or sleep-inducing properties of the hop plant. Humulus. The books are full of anecdotal evidence. It's said that the field workers who harvested hops in Kent would often become drowsy from the sheer exposure to the plant's pollen and aromatic oils. This observation led to the creation of the hop pillow. The widely accepted historical fact is that King George III, the very monarch who had famously suffered from bouts of madness and insomnia, was prescribed a pillow stuffed with hops to help him sleep. If it was good enough for a king, you reason, it's certainly worth a try for a neurasthenic Londoner. The challenge now is sourcing the key ingredient. You can't exactly walk down to the corner grocer and ask for a pound of raw, dried hops. This quest takes you to a different part of the city, down to the sprawling borough market near the south bank of the Thames. Here, under the arching ironwork of the market roof, the air is a chaotic medley of smells: fresh fish, ripe cheese, roasting meat, and if you follow your nose, the distinct, pungent, and slightly floral aroma of hops being sold to the city's many publicans and small-scale brewers. You find a merchant with huge burlap sacks overflowing with the dried, cone-like flowers. They are a pale, greenish yellow, and feel light and papery to the touch. The smell is powerful. It's a complex, aromatic blend, part earthy, part floral, part spicy, with a clean, bitter edge. It smells like beer, but deconstructed, the pure essence of the plant itself. You buy a generous bag full, feeling a bit conspicuous, as if you're about to go into business as a brewer. The merchant gives you a knowing wink. For the brewing, he asks, or for the snoozing? The question implies this is a common, off-label use for his product. Snoozing, you admit, and he laughs. Cheaper than a doctor, and smells better, too. That evening, you perform a small act of DIY surgery. You take one of your spare pillows, carefully unpick the stitching on one side, and empty out a good portion of the dense, lumpy horsehair. Then, you begin stuffing it with the dried hop flowers. The hop pillow is a gentle friend. It doesn't force you into unconsciousness like a drug, or bore you into it like a politician. It coaxes you, nudges you, and creates a small, fragrant bubble of calm in your noisy world. It works most nights, but there are still evenings when your anxiety is too sharp, your mind too agitated, for even the most aromatic pillow to soothe. On these nights, the old restlessness returns, and you find yourself once again staring into the velvety gaslit darkness, your mind racing. You need a stronger form of tranquility, a method that engages the whole body, not just the nose. Your search leads you to a new and fashionable craze that is sweeping through the health-conscious circles of Europe: hydrotherapy, or the water cure. The concept has been imported from Germany, where men like Vinzenz Priesnitz established famous clinics in the mountains, treating thousands of patients with a rigorous and, frankly, shocking regimen of water-based treatments. It has now arrived in England, and sanatoriums dedicated to the water cure are springing up in places like Malvern and Ilkley. The theory is that water, applied in various temperatures and methods, can shock the system, stimulate the circulation, and flush out the toxins and nervous energies that cause disease, and including, of course, insomnia. You are not ready to commit to a full-blown sanatorium stay. Your experience in Little Hushing has made you wary of residential cures. But you purchase a book on the subject, The Layman's Guide to Domestic Hydrotherapy. It is a terrifying document. The book is filled with engravings of people being subjected to what looks like elaborate aquatic torture. They are being blasted with high-pressure jets of icy water, wrapped head to toe in dripping wet sheets, and forced to sit in freezing baths for extended periods. The goal, the author explains, is to produce a shock to the vital force, which will then provoke a healing crisis and restore balance. It sounds less like a cure and more like a punishment. Despite your trepidation, you decide to try one of the milder techniques recommended for nervous excitement and sleeplessness: the cold water wrap. The procedure is simple and brutal. First, you are to take a large, thick cotton sheet and plunge it into a basin of the coldest water you can tolerate. Then, you wring it out so it's not dripping, but remains thoroughly, shockingly damp and cold. The next step is to lie down on your bed, on top of a protective waterproof layer, and have an assistant, or, in your case, your own trembling hands wrap you tightly in this cold, wet sheet, from your neck down to your toes, like a mummy. You are then to be covered with a mountain of heavy wool blankets to trap the body heat. That night, you resolve to try it. You fill your wash basin with cold water from the pump in your kitchen. It is mercilessly, shockingly cold. You take a deep breath and plunge the sheet in. The cold seizes your hands and wrists, making you gasp. You wring it out, the icy water running down your arms. The sheet is now a heavy, damp, formidable-looking thing. You lay it out on your bed over an oilcloth you bought for this very purpose. You stand there in your nightshirt, looking at the damp sheet, a profound sense of dread washing over you. This feels like a terrible, terrible idea. This is a widely accepted historical fact. Hydrotherapy, in its various forms, was an immensely popular and legitimate medical movement in the 19th century. It was seen as a natural, drug-free alternative to mainstream medicine. Charles Darwin was a famous proponent and patient of the water cure, seeking relief from his chronic illnesses. While some of the treatments were indeed gentle, the more extreme methods, like the wet sheet wrap, were central to the original practice. The initial shock and discomfort were considered an essential part of the process. You take a final, deep breath and lie down. With fumbling, shivering movements, you pull the wet sheet over you and wrap it tightly around your body. The shock is instantaneous and absolute. It's a full-body, violent gasp of cold that seems to suck the very air from your lungs. Every inch of your skin screams in protest. Your muscles seize, your teeth begin to chatter uncontrollably, and for a moment, you are convinced you are giving yourself a heart attack. This is not calming. This is a full-blown physiological crisis. You want to tear it off, to escape, but you are pinned down by your own wrapping and the growing weight of the blankets you manage to pull over yourself. Asterisk, a lesser known, and rather miserable detail of this treatment was the cooling stage. The initial phase of intense cold and shivering could last for 10 to 20 minutes, a period of pure, unadulterated misery. Patients were instructed to endure it, to yield to the cold, in the belief that this was the body's vital force beginning its fight. It takes every ounce of your willpower not to scream. You lie there, a shivering, miserable cocoon, wondering what series of life choices brought you to this point. Asterisk, but then, slowly, something begins to change. Your body, in a desperate attempt to survive this icy assault, starts to fight back. It furiously generates heat, pumping warm blood to your skin. The shivering subsides. The initial violent shock of the cold is replaced by a strange, deep warmth that seems to radiate from your very core. The wet sheet against your skin is no longer cold. It feels neutral, and then, miraculously, warm. You have created a personal steam bath under the blankets. The book called this the heating stage, and it is, to your astonishment, deeply, profoundly relaxing. Asterisk, historians and physiologists still analyze why this works. The massive expenditure of energy to combat the cold, the dramatic shift in circulation, and the eventual cocoon of self-generated warmth combine to create a powerful sedative effect. Your body, having won the battle against the cold, is exhausted and flooded with endorphins. The frantic energy of your mind has been co-opted for a more primal purpose: survival. Asterisk, you lie there in your warm DAMP nest, your limbs heavy and relaxed. The frantic, chattering thoughts have vanished, replaced by a simple, animal awareness of your own warmth and stillness. The city outside, with its clatter and its worries, feels a million miles away. You are in a quiet, dark, warm, and humid world of your own making. It was a brutal journey, a 10-minute trip through a personal Arctic hell, but the destination is a state of calm so deep it feels almost embryonic. You have shocked your system into silence, and as you drift in that warm, steamy darkness, you finally, completely, let go. Asterisk, the water cure is a powerful tool, but a drastic one. Wrapping yourself in a freezing sheet every night feels less like a sustainable lifestyle choice and more like a form of self-flagellation. You reserve it for emergencies, for nights when the walls of your mind are truly closing in. For a while, you exist in a strange equilibrium, rotating through your arsenal of remedies. Some nights, it's the gentle, aromatic nudge of the hot pillow. Other nights, it's the mind-numbing power of a chapter on 19th century agricultural policy. And on the worst nights, it's the icy embrace of the hydrotherapy sheet. You have become a connoisseur of cures, a sommelier of sedatives. Asterisk, one evening, after a particularly trying day, you feel the familiar tendrils of anxiety beginning to creep in. You know it will be a bad night. You mentally prepare for battle, running through your options. Should you start with the parliamentary debates, or go straight to the shock and awe of the cold water rap? You feel a profound sense of weariness that has nothing to do with lack of sleep. It's a weariness of the process itself. The constant strategizing, the nightly ritual of treating yourself, has become a source of stress all its own. Asterisk, instead of starting one of your elaborate routines, you do something different. You do nothing. You walk over to the window, the same one that lets in the sounds of the restless city, and you pull back the heavy damask curtains. You don't open it to the miasma, but you press your forehead against a cool, smooth glass. The fog has cleared tonight, and the street below is bathed in the stark, lonely glow of the gas lamps. A light rain is falling, and the cobblestones glisten, reflecting the light in shimmering, distorted pools. Asterisk, you just stand there and watch. A hansom cab rattles by, the horses hooves, making a rhythmic, almost gentle, splashing sound. A lone figure in a heavy coat and top hat walks briskly down the opposite pavement, his reflection a dark smudge in the wet stone. You watch him until he turns a corner and disappears. The church clock begins to chime midnight, its familiar tones less of an intrusion tonight and more of a landmark. A steady, reliable voice in the darkness. You are not trying to block out the sounds or the sights. For the first time, you are just observing them. This moment of quiet, non-judgmental observation is something that none of the cures offered. They were all about doing something, ingesting a potion, activating a device, reading a text, shocking the system. The widely accepted historical fact is that many Victorian cures, especially for nervous disorders, were incredibly active and interventionist. The prevailing medical philosophy was that the body was a system to be managed, controlled, and corrected. The idea of passive acceptance, of simply allowing a state to be what it is, was largely alien to the proactive problem-solving mindset of the age. You get into bed. The sheets feel cool and welcoming. The horsehair mattress has its familiar landscape of lumps and valleys. But tonight they feel less like flaws and more like the contours of home. You don't reach for the hot pillow. You don't glance at the ominous, thick volume of parliamentary debates. You'll just lie on your back, your hands resting gently on your stomach, and breathe. You pull the blankets up, not as a shield or as part of a hydrotherapeutic procedure, but simply for the comforting weight. The room is not dark. With the curtains open, the ambient light from the street fills the space with a soft, pearlescent glow. Shadows are long and gentle, the sharp edges of the furniture softened into vague, unthreatening shapes. You can see the faint outline of the wardrobe, where your collection of failed cures, the magnetic pillow, the galvanic belt are stored away like relics from a past life, souvenirs from a long and pointless war. You feel a strange sense of fondness for them now, for the desperate hope they represented. You listen. The sounds of London are still there, a constant, low-grade hum punctuated by the occasional clatter of a late-night cart or the distant, mournful cry of a steam train. But your relationship to the noise has changed. You are no longer cataloging each sound as an enemy, an intrusion. You are simply noticing it. It is the sound of the world turning, the sound of the vast sleeping and waking city you are a part of. It is the soundtrack to your life, and for the first time, you let it be just that. You let the sounds wash over you, not trying to resist them, not trying to analyze them. They are waves on a distant shore. They have nothing to do with you. You had started this journey, believing sleep was a place you had to find, a destination you had to fight your way to. You saw it as a locked room, and you spent all your energy searching for the right key, a chemical key, a geographical key, a mechanical key, an intellectual key. But now, lying here in the quiet acceptance of the moment, you understand. Sleep isn't a room you break into. It's a visitor that arrives when you stop standing guard at the door. The widely accepted historical fact, which has become a modern psychological one, is that sleep is a process of surrender. It requires a letting go of control, a release of the conscious, striving mind. All your Victorian efforts, the strenuous attempts to regulate your body's temperature, align its magnetic fields, balance its humors, and recharge its electrical currents were acts of control. They were the very antithesis of the surrender that sleep requires. They were, in their own way, a form of vigilance. As you lie there, you feel a deep, physical sense of that surrender beginning to happen. The tension you habitually hold in your jaw starts to release. The tight knot in your shoulders begins to soften. You consciously relax your hands, which you realize were lightly clenched. Your breathing, which you are no longer trying to control or count, deepens and slows, finding its own natural, easy rhythm. You are not trying to relax. You are simply allowing the relaxation to occur. Lesser-known detail from Victorian diaries and letters is that even amidst the craze for cures and remedies, moments of this simple wisdom occasionally break through. You might find a passing mention, after a long description of some new patent medicine, of the fact that in the end, a quiet mind and a comfortable bed are the only true physicians for a weary soul. It's a truth that has always been there, quietly waiting to be rediscovered beneath the mountain of well-intentioned but misguided effort. Asterisk, your thoughts begin to lose their sharp edges. They drift unmoored from the anchor of anxiety. The awkward conversation with the baker might float by, but it's a distant cloud, no longer a storm. The memory of the cow mooing in the Sussex countryside surfaces, and you feel a small, sleepy smile touch your lips. The image of Dr. Finch's formidable beard appears for a moment, then dissolves into a soft, gray fog. Your thoughts are becoming lighter, more transparent, like smoke. They are losing their power. They are becoming dreams. Asterisk, historians will always wonder about the inner lives of people in the past, about the texture of their anxieties and the nature of their peace. Tonight, you have traveled the full arc of a very Victorian anxiety, and you have landed, unexpectedly, in a place of timeless peace. The solution was not in the potions, the machines, or the books. It was in the quiet cessation of the search. Asterisk, the gaslight from the street outside casts a long, gentle rectangle of light on the ceiling. You watch it for a moment, your eyes half closed. It seems to pulse softly, in time with your own slow heartbeat. The city breathes its low, steady hum. Your body feels heavy, warm, and anchored to the bed. Your mind, finally, is quiet. You are no longer waiting for sleep. You are no longer fighting for it. You are simply drifting, on a slow, gentle tide, out into the deep, quiet, and welcoming dark. Asterisk, you are drifting now, on a calm and quiet sea. The last of your thoughts are like smooth, gray stones, sinking slowly, effortlessly, into the deep, still water below. There is nothing left for you to do, nothing to solve, nothing to hold on to. The weight of the day, the weight of all the effort, and all the trying, has finally been set down. Feel that sense of release, that gentle, welcome heaviness in your limbs. Your arms are heavy and warm. Your legs are heavy and peaceful. Asterisk, let your breath be an anchor, a soft, steady rhythm in the quiet of the night. A slow breath in, and a long, soft, easy breath out. Each time you exhale, you let go of a little more. You are safe. You are comfortable. The world outside your window will continue its turning. The city will continue its humming, but none of it requires your attention. Your only task now is to rest, to allow yourself this time of deep, quiet, and effortless peace. Asterisk, imagine the soft, gray light in your room. It is a gentle, protective glow, wrapping you in stillness. There are no sharp edges here, no sudden noises to startle you, just the steady, peaceful rhythm of the night. You are floating now, in that gentle space between wakefulness and sleep. Allow yourself to drift further. Let the tide carry you. There is nowhere else you need to be, nothing else you need to do. Just rest. Just sleep.